we have certain strengths and we have certain weaknesses that we are born with. And that is, even if you go beyond the domain of astrology, that is based on genetics, livelihood, circumstances.
Are you ready to transform your life? This is a no nonsense show helping immigrants like you create generational wealth, even while working full time. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Saket Jain.
Welcome back, my Grit to Wealth listeners. Today, do I have a treat for you? So, for those of you who are from Indian background, not necessarily Indian, it's true in other backgrounds as well, you would have heard of a term called horoscope, which is horoscope. It's not horoscope. I make fun of that always. It's not horoscope. It's actually horoscope. So I met the guest today is Souvik Dutta. I met Souvik through actually happenstance. My wife, for those of you who know, my wife's she's a full-time student in Ayurveda right now. And through her friend, somebody talked about somebody and somebody talked about somebody. And I was having a question in my life at that point, and I went back to my roots of astrology. And I'm like, you know what? I wish I knew somebody who can really answer this question for me to get me some guidance. And that's how I met Souvik. And for those of you who know my background, I am not a big follower in destiny, predestined. I'm a free will guy. You can make your own future and all that stuff. And at that time, I was struggling with a question that is what I want to do predestined, or is there a free will involved? And if it's predestined, then why am I trying so hard? Just tell me what the destiny is, if somebody could tell me, and then maybe I'll just give into it. That's really the question I was struggling with. And I think I want you to keep that question in mind as we go forward with this conversation, because Souvik is master of this question. He's spent decades in dissecting it, in researching it, and coming up with his own perspective on that. And he's a master on that. I think if there's anyone I would say that you should go and talk to about this, it'll probably be Souvik. I don't talk to anybody else about this anymore. So with that, I will open up. Souvik is a practitioner of Vedic sciences. He's a consultant. He does workshops, and he is connected in the who's of the whole world of that astrology, Vedic sciences department, Vedic sciences domain, where he also now mentors students who are really trying to dig deeper into this as one of their service offering to the society. Right? That's what Souvik is. The words don't do any justice to him. So let's just jump in. Souvik, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you so much, Saket. It's an honor to be here.
No, thank you. Thank you a lot. I was joking. I was half joking that I always made fun of the horoscopes, because a funny story for me was when we were trying to get married, and I don't think I've talked to you about this story. When I was trying to get married, my mom showed my horoscope and the then wife horoscope to somebody in India. They said, that's fine. Your son can marry this girl, but he's going to die in 1 year. That was a prediction made. Of course, I haven't died. I haven't died at all, right? So I've survived it. So that's really why my first exposure as an adult to that science was that it's really not, there may be some truth to it. I don't mean to say that the marriage has been a walk in the park. It's been hard, but the choice of the words were very different, right? I'm definitely alive and I'm kicking here. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved into this wonderful, I call it a combination of science and art, a lot more science than people I think give credit to, but there's definitely an art involved as well.
So, very, very interesting your story, and my story of getting involved or getting initiated into this stream of thought is very similar. I was told once when I was a very young kid. I actually was a very sick young kid. I had tremendous amount of health issues, asthma being one, and I was told that I wouldn't really be able to do much in my life. And so I got curious as to why, and these were from astrologers. And I was very fortunate to have access to my guru, who then, took time for me to get to a certain age, and then answered my questions and asked me to dig deeper. And when I went on this journey of self discovery and met some really great masters on the way, I figured out that it's very far from being fatalistic. It is just science and an art, as you said. I do agree to that, which takes you closer to understanding your strengths and particularly sheds light on your weakness.
So you said two words. I wanna go into that. So I think the three words actually. One was you said guru and masters. Was that
Yes.
so? You said you met your guru and then you met masters. Do these
Yes.
words mean different things to you?
Yes, because it's just like your first love. So when you fall in love for the first time, that is your love. And whenever after that it works out, it doesn't work out, mostly it doesn't work out. And when you have other interactions, you have other people who walk into your life and they also become very close to you. And maybe one of those people you settle in life with, they are still your love, but the first one is special. So
Hmm.
similarly, the title of guru I do give to someone who's just much more than my teacher of astrology. He was the person who initiated me into spiritual life. I think I
Got it.
owe a lot of what I have achieved from him. The other ones are also my gurus, but I do refer to them as masters because they were teachers. They were teachers who basically clarified my doubts, also gave me principles of life, but the first always remains special. So the title
Got
of
it.
guru, I fondly give it to my first teacher.
Got it. No, thank you for making the clarification because I just want to make sure people understand that there are two. There is a reason for the using those two separate terms. And the other word you used was initiated into this practice. What does that mean to you?
It's basically like those who are into martial arts, or those who are into sports, or those who are into anything which becomes more than a hobby. It becomes a part of your life. For example, swimming. When you start it, it's not a practice which ends in a season. It's not a practice that ends in a year. It's not a practice that you graduate from. It's a practice which continues throughout your life. And
Got it.
such practices, and especially in the domain of sciences which are not readily accessible to people, which are more esoteric in nature, for the lack of a better word, we call it initiation. That means when you get initiated, it's like a lifelong practice. And
Got it.
people have initiations in many ways. But for me, it was an initiation into spiritual life, into the science of astrology. And it's a lifelong process.
Awesome. So let's jump into the crux of the question right now. How long you been practicing Souvik now?
So I got initiated at the age of 8. I started teaching astrology in United States from 2005. And so almost 20 years I've been
20
teaching and
years.
practicing astrology.
Perfect. So you've seen, and the reason for this question was partly credibility. The other one was you've seen a lot of people. You've talked to a lot of people about this question, I'm sure. Is there something called as destiny or free will has a role to play in shaping your destiny? I'm casting a very broad question. I think we can talk for days on this topic, but in the limited time we have, let's cram that in, your perspective of that.
This is a very hot topic, and many, in the years when I was studying, that time social media was not that popular, but there used to be email chains and groups where people fought for weeks, months, years on this topic. My take on it is very simple. My take on it is, and it's very popular, it's not something that you would hear new, but even in the domain of education, people often say, teachers say that we have to identify, we can't force a fish to swim,
Hmm.
and we can't force a bird to go underwater. Everyone is meant to be different. At the same time, how far can a bird fly? That also depends on the will of the bird. So, first we have to identify, I'm a fish or a bird. That if everyone says that everyone can be a fish and a bird, that that is, in my opinion, not intelligent thing to say. We have certain strengths and we have certain weaknesses that we are born with, and that is, even if you go beyond the domain of astrology, that is based on genetics, livelihood, circumstances, and if you believe in destiny, then that is destiny.
Sure.
Then the question comes that based on the potential that you are born with, is there a limit? That is the question where free will comes in. No, there is not. If you identify, if you acknowledge what is your strength and weakness and you work towards it, it all depends how much effort you put in. So there is a casing of destiny and there is a potential of free will. Both are correct. So first we have to identify, am I a monkey or a horse? And it's very funny that Chinese zodiac signs are animals. And for the Vedic signs, there are also, animals and things, primarily animals, mostly one or
Right.
two things. But so we have to identify what we are and then take that potential and use maximum benefit of it through our effort. But if we think that, yes, a fish probably, and I'm just hypothetically saying that if a fish through tremendous amount of training can probably climb a tree, but it is going to be a really bad climber, right? But instead, the fish could really become a great swimmer.
That's beautiful, Souvik. I think it's an important aspect because, and the reason why I'm thinking is for those of you who have kids in your children at your home, they both are growing up in the same household. But by, especially if they're your own child, you're watching them consistent basis, and hopefully you love them both, not equally. I'm sure there's one favorite. But if you watch them, each of them are individual. They're very different personalities, right? And especially at the younger ages, if you saw that, because now you can say the external world has shaped them. But if you saw them at a younger age, they came up with their own personalities, right? And that's why I've always wondered that question. How can a child have a personality when there's no external environment shaping them? And you're getting the same mom, same dad, similar upbringing, almost similar, one could argue. I think what you're saying is that one, and I'm not using this as a completely metaphorical analogy, one could be a fish and one could be a bird, right?
Yeah.
And you just don't know it because you're treating them as same entity, but they could be
Absolutely.
in a completely different way of saying, don't force me to climb the tree. I'm meant to swim.
Yes.
I think that's a beautiful part because all of us are trying to say, hey, you know what? We want to quit our jobs and be entrepreneurs. Perfect. You could. But are all of us entrepreneurs? I'm using this again as don't take this as literally for audience. That doesn't mean that for every single decision you have to figure out, am I a fish or a horse? I think we're talking about in generalities that you need to figure out what your core potential is so that you can maximize it. Is that true, Souvik, or did I butcher it completely?
No, you are absolutely right. And the question, and I love skeptics, by the way. I was one. And one of the things that can come to your mind is that how come fishes are born to horses? How is that possible? It doesn't happen in nature. Yes, it doesn't. But also something else doesn't happen in nature. Every species other than humans have a specified mating season, have a specified time when their offsprings are born. The only exception is us on the top of the ecosystem of the food chain, where we can decide when our offsprings will be born.
Why is that, Souvik? Because now that you mentioned it,
We have been given the free will. We are most
free
advanced.
will.
We have the spark of God within us. We have the control over nature. That's why we have done these beautiful things that we have access to. We have access to this information. We are right now talking in two different parts of the country through
True.
internet. We have achieved that through our intelligence, and that is not possible without a divine spark. And so we have tremendous potential of growth. But at the same time, one who has devised into technology or entered into the field of technology has done so because he or she had the inclination. Doesn't mean that he and she has been born in the family of IT engineers,
Very true.
right?
Very true.
And maybe a beautiful artist, a beautiful dancer does so, and she's brilliant, not only because she's born into a family of dancers or he's
True.
born.
True. I mean,
Right?
we know so many examples of sports people, right? Where their parents were not athletes, but these guys are, the Michael Jordans of the world. They are, I don't know much background, how generational story about them. They were no athletes. And they're like gods of their games now. Makes sense.
Exactly. And not necessarily their offspring will be the same.
True. So, Souvik, let's ask this once in the interest of time here. I know you have a hard stop, so I want to be respectful of that. When people are looking at Okay, one of the themes of our show is gain financial freedom so that you can gain back your time. That's the only reason. We're not saying buy yachts, buy your private planes. If you choose to, great, good for you. But the goal is to get you time back. So if somebody were to come to you, what would that look like? Because I know you do consultations. We'll talk about that towards the end as well. But why would somebody come to you, and why is it important to have that perspective so then they can progress in their life?
Most important thing about anything to do with finances is to know, acknowledge, and understand one's own skill. Skill which one already is born with, from the moment of their birth. And just that, we sometimes don't acknowledge it. These skills may be present in their social interaction, in their interaction with their friends. The problem is we associate skills in the 21st century too much with our profession.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be that way. Skills are independent of profession. People choose profession sometimes because that's the option that they are exposed to. Sometimes they choose professions because at some point of time, due to whatever pressure or whatever circumstances, they chose a field of study. But it doesn't have to be that way. Once one understands what is their underlying skill, they can use that to the maximum ability, be smart, and make that skill generate money for them. I would say more than focusing on money, one should focus on the skills that they have naturally imbibed in them so that they can use it, and wealth being a byproduct. What is wealth? What is money? Money is the return of action, is the return of, in today's age and time, if we work, then what do we get in reward? A quotient of that is money.
Right.
So finally, it boils down to what is my skill? How can I be smart about it? And if one identifies what is their skill, for example, let's look at professions. Being a full time YouTuber was not even thought about just 10 years ago,
Yeah.
right? Today, that is a profession. Now we have artificial intelligence. There are going to be many things which are going to get wiped out, many professions which will get wiped out, many professions which will be born. But what doesn't change is the underlying skill of an individual. And then knowing that and adapting it to the current times is what will make a person smart and eventually rich.
So this is great, but let's go deeper into folks who have spent. Let's say somebody's coming to you when they're 50 years old or 40 years old. I'm making it up again, hypothetical example, and they say, "Oh, I've spent all my life doing X, and I am fairly successful at making, but I'm not happy. Now, can you help me figure out a next path?" And you say that, and you'll use me as an example. Saket, you were a consultant. You're not meant to be a consultant. You're meant to do something different. I'm like, now at 40, I'm going to go change my entire skill set. Do you encounter that question? Or maybe I'm just making it, because I can see if somebody came to you at 20, that's a very different question, right? But they may not listen to you. That's a different problem. But if somebody coming to you 40 or 50, they have a life that they've built. They have their own successes. They have their challenges. At this point, the resistance of change for some people is very high. So how does that fit into it? Like, how much do you pay attention to when somebody come to you at their question? Will that person is going to take that advice, or I need to tell them some in a different way?
If someone comes to me at 40 or 50 and tells me that, and I see that there is, so here's another thing. A particular individual can have many skills working on them, but there is one skill that is most predominant. If someone at 40 and 50 says that he or she has been an accountant all throughout their life, but unhappy, and I see another skill very predominant in them, I generally ask them the question that, what do you do for fun? Maybe that person does stage as a hobby or likes ice fishing. The person is so focused on the other thing that they forget that that has always been their primary skill.
Got
They
it.
have done the other skill just to pay their bills. It is not possible that at the age of 40 and 50, an individual has never tapped into the most prominent skill, even if that has been a hobby, or even if that is a skill that they have paid for to make it happen. They
Yeah.
will definitely do it. Just that they're not aware they could have made a lot more money if they would have used their primary skill.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I go back to our first interaction where you told me, and I have no issues sharing with folks, that teaching and sharing is one of my core reasons for existence. And if I had to reflect back, I've been a consultant all my life. I always related boredom to consultant. Because consulting projects are 2 months, 2 weeks. They're very timed. After certain times, it'll end, and then something new will come up. I always thought that was the trigger because I get bored easily and I need change. I think the core of that was actually very different because I like to share what I know in
Yep.
order to help others grow. And
Yep.
that's a satisfaction that consulting gave me. But I never made that connection, and I was always unsettled. I'm like, why am I unsettled? It's not an unsettling feeling. I'm looking for mechanism to share what I know. It
Yep.
was once I made that connection, I think it just became very clear to me that all the dots got connected back very clearly of why I was doing what I was doing. So again, thank you for that. I just wanted to share that. It's very powerful to know that. I didn't realize it, but it's very powerful and liberating to
No,
understand that.
but then even without realizing it, look at what you're doing now, Saket. This gives you joy because you're sharing.
Definitely.
Right now, what you're
Definitely.
doing is what you're doing right now is just for the pleasure of it.
Correct.
This is what I was mentioning to you. So yeah, I mean, you would do it even at 40, 50, even if that was not because really from the language that I read, what you have done to pay your bill is immaterial. From the
Hmm.
language, what I read is what brings you maximum joy, what is your core, and such that aspect of your life, even if it didn't was the reason that brought money to put the bread on the table, it
Right.
would have been something that you would have definitely done either through your kids, either socially, or you would have spent money to experience it. You would have
Right.
absolutely done.
Definitely. So in the last question here, before I let you go, is going to be one of is there are so many astrologers, or there's so many Jyotish Shastra practitioners in this world now. And I was watching the Indian channel the other day. Some Jyotish came in and they had their 1-800 number listed and all that good stuff. How does one find the one who is genuine about it, right? Kind of like, and who tells. Now, I'm pretty sure. Before you answer that question, just one context. Not everything you say is going to come true either for anybody, right? Because these are interpretations, and there's human element to that. So I want to figure it out. That is it. If somebody were to come to you and they had no idea who you are, how do you establish that trust that you are the right astrologer for them? Because I'm sure at some point you want to make sure that that you're helping them achieve whatever question they have in their mind, solve the questions and queries they have in their mind.
No, the answer to this question was in the last part of your comment. Two things. One is one of the philosophies that one would need to believe in to enter into the zone of Vedic sciences is not religion. You can be from any religion, but one of the philosophies that you would have to believe in is it will be easier if you believe in it because the philosophy will apply to you irrespective of your belief system is a philosophy of karma. Okay, the philosophy of karma, and everyone on the globe today, almost everyone would have heard this term. The term is very simple, that every action that you do would have consequences,
Correct.
right? And these consequences and these actions goes beyond lifetimes. That is the concept. So in that concept is tied, the answer to your question is encapsulated in that concept, that you basically meet people that you are destined to meet. Okay, there are some very interesting stories. Some people say that, oh, how would I meet a great guru, how would I meet a great teacher, how would I
Right.
meet a great astrologer, how would I meet a great mentor, how would I meet a great teacher, how would I, like, or a coach who will coach me in sports. Well, it's your karma. There is
Mhm.
definitely a starting point, which we call destiny, but there is ample free will for you to constantly change your actions, which in turn will lead you up to meeting people.
Mm.
So, the person who is going to meet me at some point in time, that individual's karmic path and my karmic path will connect. That's how
Got
the
it.
person will be. Not necessarily because I'm good, because I'm brilliant, or not necessarily that person deserves someone else. And that is how people have marriages. That is how certain children are born to certain people. That is how certain people are born into certain families. That is how certain people work in certain organizations, get fired or leave jobs or go to something else. It's karma. So that is one thing. And the second thing is the awareness of Jyotish, or this science of Vedic astrology, was written some 10,000 to 5,000 years ago by various numerous people in a subcontinent far, far away from this land.
Yeah.
Therefore, some of the concepts were written based on the concept of the then society, the then time period, the then rules, the then culture. One needs to understand this concept, but translate it in the language based on Sthan Kal Patra, or in other words, the time that we are in, the individual that we are talking to, and the background of the individual that we're talking to. The same concept of education that applies to someone born in Japan is not applicable to someone born in United States of America.
True.
So just that awareness, that changes everything.
That's perfect. So would it fair to say that folks who are listening to this and they listen to this episode about you, their paths are somehow intertwined with you?
Absolutely. You will never go across or come across a YouTube video or any podcast for that matter that interests you unless you're karmically inclined, which is why scrolling is so popular these days.
Wow. So I just learned something so different. I thought these were Google ad patterns and something else, but I think you're right. Why is the ad showing on your side?
You're going to pay attention. Now, Google can recommend, but not necessarily that you're going to spend more than 6 seconds on it.
True. Well, so this is fantastic, man. I think I'm going to have to bring you on for maybe a longer conversation. This is beautiful. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate that. And for the audience, thank you. Hopefully, the topic is so broad, and I just actually, I'm calling now Souvik my guru for Jyotish. I'm trying to learn a little bit more and get a little bit more smarter about learning the world, learning the planet, the ways of the planet, and how they affect me. But for other folks, Souvik, who want to get a conversation started with you, they may have a burning desire or a question, or they just want to experiment with this, how can they reach out to you? Or can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. They can reach out to me. I do offer private consultations. The best way is to send me an email, aiaclasses@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook and social media with the same profile, AIA Classes.
A as in Alpha, I as in India, A as in Alpha, classes, plural, aiaclasses@gmail.com. So I'm sending you email right after this. You know that. So for others, I would say that try this if you have a perspective, a jaded perspective. I think Souvik has the potential of changing it. So give it a shot. At least send him an email and take him up his offer of giving you a private consultation. Souvik, thank you again for your time, buddy. I really appreciate that. And thank you everyone for tuning in. As you know by now, Souvik has said, our paths are intertwined, so you're stuck with me forever. So thank you again for being the audience. Take care. Bye.
If you got value from this episode, you might consider sharing this content with a friend. But most importantly, be sure to take action on what you've learned. One way you can take the next step is to connect directly with Saket on an investor call. That link is waiting for you in the show notes below.